She is not judging your words when you walk into a room. She is decoding your psychological state before you even realize she noticed you. And most men are completely unaware they're already being categorized within seconds. That first impression is silently deciding your entire outcome. Most men think attraction begins when they speak. But psychology says something more uncomfortable: it begins before you say a single word. Because in the first 3 to 7 seconds of you walking into a room, people don't observe you, they decode you. Quietly. Automatically. Almost brutally. And here's the part no one tells you. What she thinks in that moment is usually not about your looks. It's about your signal. Your energy. Your certainty. Your internal state leaking through your posture, your pace, your eyes. And once that impression is formed, everything you do after is filtered through it. So here's the real question. What is she actually thinking when you walk in, before you even notice her noticing you? And more importantly, would you even recognize yourself in that answer? In this video, we're breaking down exactly what goes on in a woman's mind during those first moments of perception, especially mature women who are far more calibrated in reading social cues, intention, and emotional stability. We're going into the psychology of first impressions, nonverbal dominance, microsignals of confidence, and the hidden filters that decide whether you're seen as safe, interesting, forgettable, or intriguing. By the end, you won't just understand attraction better, you'll understand how you are being read before you ever get a chance to perform. And a lot of what you think is working, might actually be working against you. This isn't theory for entertainment. It's rooted in decades of social psychology research on impression formation, thin slicing, and nonverbal communication. So let's start where everything actually begins, the moment you enter her awareness. Picture this. You walk into a room. A cafe. A gathering. Maybe a friend's event. You're not thinking much, just scanning for familiarity. But someone else is already tracking you. Not directly. Not obviously. But peripherally. Psychologists call this thin slicing, the brain's ability to make rapid judgments from extremely limited data. Within seconds, people form stable impressions of your confidence, social status, and emotional stability. And here's the critical part. She is not asking, is he attractive? She is asking something far more primal: does this man belong here, or is he trying to prove he belongs? Because people don't evaluate presence, they evaluate certainty of presence. If you walk in slightly rushed, scanning too much, adjusting yourself, overchecking reactions, you signal uncertainty. But if you walk in with calm direction, not performance, just placement, the interpretation changes entirely. You're no longer a man entering a room. You become a man who exists comfortably in rooms. And that difference is what creates curiosity. Transition, but what happens after that first impression is formed is even more revealing. Let's say she notices you. Now her brain does something interesting, it doesn't evaluate you in isolation anymore. It compares you. Not to other men directly, but to a status framework in her mind. This is called social comparison theory. She unconsciously asks, do others react to him? Does he lead attention or chase it? Does he look grounded or socially dependent? Here's a subtle truth most men miss. Women don't just feel attraction, they validate it socially, even when they don't say it out loud. So if you walk in and immediately try to be liked, you flip the dynamic. You become reactive instead of anchored. But if you're neutral, composed, slightly indifferent to approval, something shifts. Now she has to interpret you instead of dismissing you. And interpretation creates mental engagement. And mental engagement is the beginning of emotional investment. Transition, but there's another layer happening that most men completely overlook. Mature women are not primarily scanning for excitement. They are scanning for emotional predictability. Not boring predictability, but stable internal regulation. Because attraction without safety collapses quickly in adult psychology. In those first moments, she is reading, does he feel reactive? Does he feel emotionally loud? Does he feel grounded or unstable? This is where microbehaviors matter more than words: your eye movement, your pacing, your stillness when not speaking. A man who fidgets, oversmiles, or overperforms can unintentionally signal emotional volatility. Meanwhile, a man who simply occupies space without urgency signals something different entirely: containment. And containment is interpreted as strength. Not dominance in a loud sense, but psychological steadiness. And that steadiness is rare enough to stand out. Transition, but even if you pass that filter, there's another layer she's running in the background. Here's something most men never consider. Research in impression formation shows that people decide whether they will remember you emotionally within minutes, not based on what you say, but based on how predictable your emotional signals are. Now ask yourself something honestly. If someone watched you walk into a room without sound, just your movement, would they describe you as predictable or unstable? Because that answer is often the difference between attraction and indifference. Now let's go deeper. At this stage, she is subconsciously checking for something psychologists call congruence. Does your internal state match your external expression? For example, are you confident but tense underneath? Are you friendly but approval-seeking underneath? Are you calm but internally anxious? People are surprisingly good at detecting mismatch. Not consciously, but through microsignals. This is why some men feel off without knowing why. It's not a flaw in appearance, it's a mismatch in signal coherence. When a man is congruent, everything aligns: his posture matches his pace. His gaze matches his intention. His expression matches his internal rhythm. And that creates a feeling in others that is hard to explain but easy to feel: nothing is off here. And when nothing is off, the mind relaxes. And relaxed attention becomes curiosity. Transition, but curiosity alone isn't attraction yet, something deeper must activate. Now imagine the dynamic shifts slightly. She has noticed you. You have not reacted to her. This is where attention psychology changes everything. Most men unconsciously pull attention, they look for feedback, validation, recognition. But high-value perception is created when attention appears to orbit you instead. Not because you demand it, but because you are not leaking need for it. This creates what can only be described as attention gravity. People don't know why they keep checking you. But they do. It's the absence of emotional begging signals. No scanning for approval. No over-explaining presence. No urgency to be perceived. Just presence without negotiation. And that non-negotiation is interpreted as value. Transition, but here's where everything either locks in or falls apart. At this stage, she is no longer asking, "Who is he?" She is asking something more subtle: "What does he want from this room?" Because intent leaks faster than words. If your behavior suggests extraction, attention, validation, approval, she distances internally. But if your behavior suggests self-directed presence, you are there because you choose to be there, curiosity increases. This is why some men enter a room and instantly feel out of reach. Not because they are superior, but because their intent is not socially dependent. And that creates psychological space. And space creates intrigue. Here's the truth most men never hear clearly enough. She is not evaluating your performance. She is evaluating your relationship with yourself. Because every signal you send, confidence, anxiety, calm, neediness, groundedness, is just a reflection of internal structure made visible. When a woman looks at you, especially a mature one, she is not thinking in simple terms like good or bad. She is feeling a question that sits underneath everything else: does this man have a center, or is he looking for one in other people? And if she senses that your center is external, approval, attention, validation, attraction becomes unstable. But if she senses that your center is internal, stable, unshakable, not dependent on reaction, something quieter happens. Respect forms first. Curiosity follows. Attraction becomes possible after that. Not because you changed who you are, but because you stopped leaking uncertainty. And the hardest truth is this: most men are not rejected for lack of value. They are ignored for lack of signal clarity. If this resonated with you, don't just treat it as information. Notice where it shows up in your real behavior, especially in social environments where you're not trying to impress anyone. Because awareness without observation changes nothing. And I want to ask you something specific. When you walk into a room, do you think you're being seen for who you are, or for the emotional signals you're unconsciously sending? Drop your answer in the comments. I read them closely, because patterns show up in what men don't say as much as what they do. And in the next video, we're going to break down something even more revealing: why some men become memorable instantly, while others are completely forgotten within minutes, even if they said and did everything right. Because memory in attraction doesn't work the way most people assume. Until then, pay attention to what enters the room before you speak. Because that part of you is already talking.